everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Common Ground webinar series. I am Monica Mudun Shetty from Hyderabad, and along with me I have Kaushik Srinivasan from Chennai, and we should be moderating the session today. In the last episode, around 600 attendees joined us to listen to Jacob Peter, Senior Vice President at Bosch Engineering Business, and he had covered the micro and macro phenomenon of the automotive industry in the Indian context, along with futuristic insights about the path ahead. Today, we are very pleased to have with us Mr. Srikanth and our Managing Director, Human Resources at Accenture. 30 years of industry experience with global organizations in technology and consulting. Currently is responsible for the overall talent strategy and transformation for over 120,000 professionals. Working with his team of more than 500 professionals, he has been instrumental in designing and executing strategic people transformation at scale for Accenture and a newly designed career architecture for Accenture Technology, which has resulted in the rotation of over 80,000 people to new IT technologies, which include AI, blockchain, DevOps, cloud, amongst others. Mr. Srikanth, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. Over to you.
Thank you all. Good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure being here with the PMI team and happy to share my thoughts through this. What a wonderful way to connect on a Saturday afternoon, which otherwise would have been boring, but next Saturday would have been different with the IPL starting. So here's what, when we were talking about what is it that we would like to, I was asked what is it that I would like to share from my years of experience. I, as a person, I'm interested in looking at what the future holds for us and how is it that we can stay relevant to that. Uh, what is it? Why am I calling it the post-digital era? I think the digital era went off in a blink of an eyelid, right? Somewhere between 2008 and 2012, before we could realize that was the phase when you had things that were happening, which was the digital era, about things coming together or being created for a platform which is very different. And you all would have been aware, and I have heard about it, Industry 4.0, HR 4.0, whatever it is, and everything continues to be talking about the revolution of digital in the world of tomorrow. Somewhere I heard and I coined this phrase to a team of my colleagues when we were sitting in a workshop in London a couple of years back, and that continues to resonate with me. One is today is the slowest day of the future. So if you really think about it, if today is a fast-paced world that we are living in, sorry, this is the slowest day of the future. So tomorrow you can expect that this is going to be even more crazier than what you have experienced today. All things are happening around us that are taking us away from what we used to have as conventional wisdom and the way in which we used to be behaving as leaders or being imparted knowledge as leaders. The way we used to go about building our own leadership capabilities and competencies a couple of years back, a decade or two back, competency was the biggest used terminology around or abused terminology. Anything that we were talking about was about competency, developing competencies, leadership competencies, and then came strategies and everything. That was all good because at that point in time, you had the world pretty much moving in a phase where you had you had the audacity to build plans that were 25 years impact, 5-year impact. Today, people are looking at not beyond a quarter per se and looking at things from a very different lens of saying what is built is not built to last, it is built to be challenged. And that is the reality into which, as we step into the post digital era, that we were, the post digital era started somewhere in 2018 because there were more digital applications and ability to converge all those applications, digital applications or technologies were brought together to help build a solution which was workable, useful, and extremely human centric. This is less about technology and the innovation of it, but the point I'm trying to pivot towards is that everything today is about an individual, me, myself, and therefore everything that revolves around me. In that context, when you look at it, it is no longer enough that you build systems that are resilient, but you need to build systems that are receptive and reciprocative too. That is how we are starting this to look at this. And this would have been great. The changes that have been happening around here, as you can see, this was the Gartner hype cycle last year, 2019, where we were seeing tremendous growth in terms of areas, right? And people who thought artificial intelligence, quantum computing are new that came into reality in the 2000s probably have to uh, go back. They were there even in the late 50s to early 60s, which were not being commercialized, for which, for artificial intelligence or AI or any kind of thing to have any kind of commercial validity, you had to build data. And so, pretty much, if you go back and look at it, about until the 90s, it was all about computerization and building mechanisms, therefore, to build data and store data. Then came the 90s where you started the ERP revolution, brought about decision making through data. Therefore, you started building tools or interfaces that were used to build decision support systems from the data that you have captured. And that required a different set of leadership, mindset, and behavior. Right? You needed to have, therefore, very strong analytical skills. You needed to have a reasonable set of uh, process knowledge and continue to automate work or use areas to automate work or tasks. Cut out to the 21st century, 2000s, which is really the next wave of all these things that were happening. You had built storage systems to capture and retain data. You were using them, and now you had other mechanisms that were there in the digital world, mobile computing. You needed to make data available to people seamlessly. And therefore, that became a very different level of leadership thought process that you had to bring in. Now, if you're wondering if my axis of conversation around leadership in the future is about technology, you're right in the sense that it requires technology because it is an indispensable part of our life. Today, whether we like it or not, if we have the fact that you and I are sitting here and conversing on a Saturday afternoon after close to 6 months of a lockdown period, it indicates that technology has been resilient and purposeful in making sure that we are still active and deliberative about what we are doing and purposeful about how we are doing it. So the future is you cannot dispense technology from leadership skills. Very simple fact in whatever is happening today in India, all the media channels that have been blaring about everything. As a leader, if one had to behave or believe, there are two things that are happening around. A, cognizant about what technology can do to leverage and benefit for the larger good of the society. The second one is therefore use it responsibly. When I say use it responsibly, I pardon this, but for a want of a better expression, a leader is today naked in the social media. She or he, her beliefs, his beliefs, everything is driven or being challenged in social media. Therefore, you cannot have a two-faced leadership style. It has to be extremely transparent and accommodative. When I say accommodative, it is not about making changes, minor adjustments, but being receptive to changes and being agile in the way in which you make your decisions and consistent in the way you will do it. While the 50s, 60s, the first wave of technology onslaught brought about a lot of processes to be identified and automated. The next one was about process that could have been, even after automated, eliminated. And in the digital era, we started reimagining what work was happening and how the work was happening. In the post digital era, while technology will continue to be built around the access of accessibility and a useful and purposefulness, as I said, it has to be radically human centric. And all technologies that are being brought into will be built around a human plus or a machine plus kind of a situation in which we will start seeing the work getting defined and technologies being built. What does it mean? You and I need to get comfortable to work with a colleague who is not a human being. You and I need to learn to work with people who are going to be making decisions based on a lot of algorithms or facts that have been captured in a very unambiguous manner, right? And therefore, anything we talk about is about how we will manage people, how we will manage the markets, and how are we going to work in our workplace. Just to look at it, if one had to look at what is it that the world was moving towards in 2019 to early 2020 was the dark power. This is Accenture's technology vision of 2019 that we have put in the dark power. What does dark stand for? Dark means data, data in terms of big data, any data that you would look at it, understanding the DNA of how you can use data to make decisions and new markets. AR is artificial, artificial reality, extended reality, immersive reality, all those things put together. Dark and Q is quantum computing. These are the trends that are today in play that are going to change the way in which we are going to manage and work and deliver value to the society. The second one is to get to know me, which is about the uniqueness of an individual. While in the past we have always used data to get into generalization, today we are using data. There are other ways in which data is being used. Either somebody says it's being used to influence decision making, it is being used in terms of understanding and tapping into unique markets or opportunities. The third one, as I said, is human plus worker, which is the worker can be anybody from a human or a machine to anything. Automation is rapid, and therefore, anything that we talk about, we need to look at it. Things that we were groomed for in a leadership style of supervisory skills, of managerial skills, are getting changed and they are getting challenged. The fourth trend is definitely to secure, which is about cyber security, data security, and anything to do with that. This becomes essential as not just as a privacy matter, the GDPR and the other things that we have heard about in the past, but in a digital world, this is the only thing that will help us ensure that there is going to be a major shift of trust to build and win in the society. And last but not the least is in terms of the consumers and the way it needs to be harnessed, the way in which we will see the technology harness and develop newer markets for us. And the consumers will probably be at the end of deciding what is best suited for them. This is where we are, and as we were moving into this world, there is something that is happening around us. The world was changing, business is changing, and therefore talent also must change. When as we are preparing and gearing up for this change, then came the pandemic. Now, as I said, the fact that you and I are here after 6 months of lockdown, pretty much 4 months globally, the economy did not move around or much did not happen. There was work that was being done, there was work that was being transacted and delivered, and a newer way in which it was being done. Newer way because all along we thought that we will not be able to sustain the fact that people can be sitting elsewhere and you will have to manage them or you will be. It's a learning process. And but for this, probably this learning would have happened in 2 years' time. But this is definitely a short term when you're talking about the way in which the world is moving. What is it therefore brought as a result into us? In the past, we were looking at work from a point of focus on predictability and efficiency. We keep saying that the 2020s and beyond will be the era of delivery. It is not about building alone, it is about delivering and delivering at a speed, a velocity which matters to the consumer. So it is a consumer first mindset with which you start building anything that you're going to be doing. Even as a leadership trait, one needs to know what is the constituent set of people and the society that you're targeting and how are you going to be answering to situations or deliberating about it. The second thing is it was highly siloed, coordinated teams that were there in the past because everybody had expertise, 30 years of experience in a particular area, and therefore you are an expert. Today, it is not about 30 years of experience, but how do you cross-functionally move around, integrate your experiences, draw upon your experiences and that of others, and break the barriers to deliver value. We had large teams in the past. Now they are moving into smaller, agile teams. Therefore, you can imagine that even a large organization, whatever be the way in which we look at it, if you talk about a new age unicorn, you probably are talking about less than 1,000 or 5,000 people working in developing the company. The rest are all people who are doing services for that company. You take an Uber, probably they have about 3,000 engineers who are working on Uber applications and developing something new and further beyond that. But they may have 10,000 people engaged by Uber and 100,000 drivers who are not really on their payrolls, that is Uber, right? Uh, Earlier, it was all structured, linear processes. I'm preaching to the choir here if I think you people know about it, which is there. Today it is faster, iterative process, agile and transparent. Hierarchical decision making to collaborative. The last couple of years we've seen more and more people moving towards decision making, which needs to be inclusive and collaborative. What does that mean for us when we talk about the world that we are focusing on, right? The decision making today has to, in the context of all that we are talking about, there's machines, there are people, engineers who are building systems that are there using machine learning, coding algorithms, and artificial intelligence mechanisms to a lot of information or suggestions and data that is there. On the other hand, you need people who are smarter enough to handle the emotions of people. The machines are not yet there I'm saying not yet there because someday they will get the day we are able to decode what an emotion means. Probably the machines can also reach that level of efficiencies about managing the emotions of people. As I said at the start, it is a world in which you need to have very, very strong principles as a leader, but you need to also be somebody seen as a very benevolent leader. There's a purpose with which you're moving in the direction that you're moving, and you need to keep the team together. Taking the team together was always a leadership trait in, that we have always been taught about. But in this context, there is no one who has gone for you to say use this path. So ability to take risk and bet and question status quo becomes the primary responsibility of a leader, right? Ability to take risk, ability to move in a direction and retract fast and change course if required. That is agility. And the third aspect of it is challenge status quo. The old saying that if it ain't broken, why fix it? Right? If it ain't broken, it is no longer useful for me. So you need to get into that mindset and say, are there holy cows that we need to challenge there? The second set of skills that any leader would want and will require, any organization will want of its leaders is ability to deliver using data. Now, where does data come in? It has been always used. Data helps you in terms of consistency, of decision making, and bottom line here is about transparency, right? The third aspect, and not necessarily in any of these, is ability to think or reimagine your work and your responsibilities for a very different world of tomorrow, which is reimagine the purpose and the role that you are doing. The role of a leader is also to constantly challenge his or her existence into it. I found this as a very interesting share that was going around on WhatsApp a couple of days back. And this is really not part of the pandemic outcome yet, but this is something back in 2015, Jacob Moran, Jacob Morgan had written about this in terms of the future of organization. Um, this is at a point in time in 2015 when cloud-based services were becoming reality. Now, I am in the manufacturing sector. How is cloud going to impact? Well, we are talking about Internet of Industrial Things. That definitely means that the products that we are building today has to change. The fan in my room, the AC in my office, the tube light and the TV in my home, all these things have a different purposes, right? The second thing is it's a connected workforce as we spoke about it. The third one, it is a smaller workforce which is being driven with a lot of entrepreneurial skills. So when you think about it, you need to think about it as any challenge that comes to you as not about a hierarchical decision making, but if this were my business, what is the impact? How will I be able to make the make the change that is required? The fourth one operates like a small company. The purpose here is to behave like a startup, which means decision making, the fear of competition, the paranoia, as Andy Grove said. Only the paranoid survive. That's the need of the hour in terms of operate like a small company, quick decision making, not hierarchical, but more in terms of a network of decision makers. People who are closest to the problem should be enabled to take those decisions, and as leaders, we stand by them. Focus on what instead of need, right? Want is something, what do we want to? This is where the challenging status quo comes in. What does the society need? What does that mean? What do we want out of this? Um, the purpose is, do you want, I can give a small example. Back in 2015, we were discussing about need a chatbot like Siri or OK Google that will answer a lot of queries for people. The question was, we need or we want to build something that can grow further. And that is how we started building it. A lot of things that are today, when you think about it, the purpose was more the problem that you wanted to handle. Hold dear the problem, not the solution that you're creating. As long as you hold the problem dear and find constant solution, you will find that the problem is moving away from where you started to newer areas, and therefore the chain of connectedness will change. Um, the sixth one is adapts to change faster. This is, you cannot just adapt to change in isolation. That would be like giving up your belief system. But you need to adapt because you want to change the way in which things are done, and you have to have a culture of innovation. Now, innovation is not about people sitting in the a team called R&D or innovation or anything. It has to be a culture. It has to be woven into the system and grown through and through in this. Innovation, in my opinion, knows no hierarchy, knows no years of experience. Uh, Most of it, anything that we think about, whether it is food app that you're using or a mobile app that you're using, everything is on the cloud. So you need to understand how to operate, and this digital service is a prerequisite. In the 6 months period, I've seen my mother at 75 plus getting used to technology and doing her social conversations on a WhatsApp chat or a Skype call. My dad running his whatever his hobby classes on Skype. These are things where we need to move. Technology becomes very rudimentary in terms of behavior and build. Uh, the ninth one is more important because it crosses beyond behavior and belief, is that it is going to be an inclusive world at the workplace. It's not just about women, diversity, it is about equality in terms at large. When you talk about it, it is equality. In India, while we have done a lot of good things, when the world was still talking about, uh, the developed world was talking about uh, adult franchise for women, India already started as a new republic with adult franchise ability to vote for everybody, irrespective of gender, caste, or economic and social status. And if you look at it, it probably took the leap of faith in terms of identifying more women leaders much ahead of the developed world. But this cannot be a flash in the pan kind of a situation. We need to brace ourselves as an organization, therefore, to be more inclusive, be more equal. And particularly in the digital era and the post-digital era that we are talking about as newspaper articles that everybody keeps writing about these days, work from home has made the play field even more level. And there is nothing that if I claim to have 30 years of experience, it is of no use because I need to learn something to stay relevant for the remaining future. That means it is an open play field, level play field for everyone. Flatter organization structures, ability to tell stories. We'll come to it a little more because it is from ability to talk to and sell to clients. Today, in a remote environment, you have to be able to uh, innovate and influence in a very different manner. democratizes learning. Earlier, this was something that organizations held very dear to themselves, saying it is our course, it is our learning, or the universities said that they had the IP about what was going to be taught to us. But look at it, it is today anything that I learn is probably coming out of the WhatsApp universities, or anything that I want to share goes back into WhatsApp universities. This is going to be a very different way than what we believe in. Long back, I have a son, a teenager, who used to tell me what can be Google need not be learned. But that's reality today. Problem is different to manage a teenager about other things. But this is reality. What can be Google is not to be learned, but it is to be used. There's a big shift that happened back in mid 2019 when people started questioning about the motive and the purpose of organization. Now, business school 101 starts with saying any company is in business to make profit, right? And with that profit comes ability to share profit through whatever means and engage in the social good of the society and giving it back. The shift that we are seeing is from profit to prosperity, and that prosperity is the purpose of existence that any organization is asking for. The last one is really adapts to the future employee and manager. The, the whole role of a supervisor has become redundant because of digital interventions. The role of a manager has gone beyond an ability to give work or provide solutions to being somebody who has to clear the pathway for people to make decisions and deliver work in a much more effective manner. As we move on, there's the changing skills of the future. As I said, this is more, we spoke a little more in detail about what it is. But look at it, there are areas that are becoming much, much more clearer. You need to have design thinking skills. You need to have, therefore, you need to have ability to work with cross-functional people, critical thinking, ability to storytelling, right? Intellectual curiosity to being data analytics, emotional intelligence that we spoke about long back is now a necessity. We spoke about entrepreneurial skills in an organization for which every leader needs to have that entrepreneurial skill. These are not the superset of all that you want, but these are some of it which I believe are the skills that are required in the future. Last but not the least, as we walk into the 2020 at Accenture, we said, what are our leadership essentials? Always do the right thing. This is a behavioral change. It is not about anymore in terms of just ability to generate revenue or profit, but doing it the right way. Lead with excellence, confidence, and underline the word here, humility, because everybody is learning. The knowledge that I have is probably outdated 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Therefore, I need to continuously learn. And in that process, I may be a slow learner, a very late adapter to the situation, but bear it with humility and lead with humility. Exemplify client centricity and treat everyone, including your employee, as a stakeholder, as a consumer, and a client. Act as a true partner to each one under our ecosystem, because it is not that I know all that you want to. I need to understand what is your problem statement, or are we trying to treat a symptom? Care deeply for all our people. That goes without saying in an organization where more and more, when we look at it, it is going to be, while there are machines that are going to do repetitive work, There are going to be human beings who are going to be doing a lot of different kind of work, and that kind of work requires people to have the humility to accept that they do not know certain things and willing to learn from people, however senior, junior they may be. Live an unwavering commitment to inclusion and diversity, and have the courage to change. These are not just for an organization like Accenture. I believe this is something that will be useful for everybody, including an organization like Accenture. Thank you, and happy to take any questions that may come in, and anything that you believe is not in the right way.
Thank you so much, Srikanth. Thank you for sharing all the details and inputs about the leadership in the post-digital era. What specifically the 14 principles of future organizations and leadership essentials? I think that goes a long way in answering a lot of questions in our minds. But still, we have a lot of questions coming in. The first one was, what's the HR view of hiring candidates, and what do companies and HR look for while selecting people?
Good question. And I guess if I had to just humor me a little, because if I had to rewind 20 years back, we used to hire people who were very similar. It was a very homogeneous lot, strong analytical thinking. Uh, the person you had a role model for a job description to be built, and therefore all the competencies, capabilities that were required were mapped to a set of individuals, and therefore you said, hire me people like Monica or hire me people like somebody else, right? Uh, that was the heterogeneity or homogeneity that we brought into the organization because you needed people to do a lot of work that was similar in nature, right? So if you could hire for a bank A a probationary officer who could go to a bank B, who from bank B went into a railways or went into insurance and LIC. I'm just using these as examples because these names are familiar to us. But if I had to look at it and say, what am I hiring for? I'm hiring for a differentiated skill that is not existing in my organization. And earlier we used to say leadership skill gaps that we need to go out and either build, borrow, or buy, right? To today, at all levels, you're saying what is the fit gap that you need to do. And therefore, I do not want one size fits all. I need people who are very uh, different. I do not need generalists. I need specialists and specialists who have the ability to move beyond one area to another, which is they're constant learners. Their learning agility is the highest. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, so Shikha, I'm just going to take off. A couple of people have asked this question, and you already touched the two magic words, right? The debate about generalists versus specialists. And many people in this group are project managers, and they have to have a broad understanding of various projects that they are delivering. So, what's the take on what's the right career path, or in what the future look like? How does somebody shape up? Do they have to necessarily specialize? For some people, it may not be possible after, let's say, 20 years of experience in being a broad-based leader.
Um, I think, once again, pardon me if I'm very blunt about it, but one has to look at it. It is not about a, the question is about staying relevant to the future. And therefore, learning is definitely a continuous process. Uh, Acquiring skills, skill was a currency, skill is now, when I say acquiring a skill, is the ability to assimilate knowledge. That is the skill that you need in it. Therefore, If you say that I'm not able to change, adaptability is, we spoke about flexibility in 5 years back. It is not about flexibility, it is about adaptability in the future. As you can see everywhere, you need to adapt. And it's easy. That's where I brought in the example of a 80-year-old father and a 75-year-old mother who have adapted to technology because technology has become, and we have all the examples at home. You probably buy a new phone and you're going to give it to your kid who is 8 years old and say, set it up for me. Now, don't ask why did you, what was written there, because they go at a pace or speed which you will not be able to keep up with. You will be still getting a phone with a lot of their applications that they want, but you will also get a working phone with you. That is a very simple way of saying adaptability. For some, the digital natives, as we call them, it is quite relevant and it comes a way of life. For the rest of us who are in the half step generation like us, we're seeing automation and all those things. It is our ability to give away certain space in our mind saying this cannot be changed. There are no holy cows in this room. And that mindset has to change and say anything that has been built has to be broken or reimagine it for what you want.
Thank you. So that leads to the next question from Moti, where he touches upon democratizing learning. He says, "What is the future then for L&D teams? Because if everybody is going to learn on their own and adapt, what will be the function of an L&D team, or do they get more into driving need-based, unique interventions? How are they expected to adapt?"
Good question. This has been a debate for myself also in terms of saying what is the purpose of certain teams that we had built. There was earlier it was called training function, right? Training function then became training and development function, and somewhere in the early 2000s we started calling it as learning and development because you train even a dog. My dog is trained, right? I'm a learner and I learn new skills. My and I teach my dog, which means I train my dog on your behavior. Uh, so training is very structured and has an outcome which is reward mechanism. Learning is a continuous process and it has to lead to something which goes transcends beyond just subject matter expertise to knowledge and wisdom. Now I'm telling an area which I'm not proficient in, but I will stop there and say what is the in the early part of the learning and development teams, we built L&D organizations saying that we will impart learning, we will measure learning. There is the famous Kirkpatrick model of evaluating, and all those things were happening. Therefore, we said we will evaluate learning, use learning as a benchmark either to manage attrition or promote people. You were using learning and development because people were doing similar kind of jobs. 500 people could be trained on Java and deployed into 50 different clients. All of them would be doing similar kind of work. Of the 500 people, 490 people would be doing testing work on some code. So there was ability to therefore evaluate the effectiveness of training in terms of saying out of the 490 people deployed into testing project, 490 of them have done it well with zero escalation from the client. That was one way of looking at it, and therefore the learning function was relevant. As you go forward, learning has to also start looking at unique or individualization of learning. Do you need 500 people to be trained on Java skills? Yes, you do need. Who are the 500 people you're going to identify? How are you going to identify them? The learning analytics is a big area that has to be looked into. The learning effectiveness that we were using as yardstick, what is the ROI of learning that is happening? Learning is now seamless. Everything is gone online. Therefore, how do you imagine the course curriculum and content and delivery of content, right? And therefore, how are you will evaluate that? Is there a way in which between a GitHub and a White Hat Junior and everything that is happening, do you need somebody who will still come into your classroom and sit and learn about coding? Or how are you going to look at it? So that learning function is going to be critical. To sum it up, it is critical to an organization. It has to be leading the change and adaptability of the organization in all sense.
Thank you, Srikanth. Just in continuation to that point which you shared about how to stay relevant, considering the changing demand of the future, is there any further pointers that you want to share about what would be the right mix of experience versus education versus skills?
Now, these are three different things, right? Education, as a parent, I would say is necessary. As an individual, I probably will go back and say the way you are consuming the knowledge that is being given to you is more important, right? And we have used education as a parameter or as a yardstick for elimination and selection in the current world. That is the hard reality. No reason to run away from that. Therefore, education will continue to be there. It has to evolve, and for all that you know, education is always a lag indicator. Education not as an individual's knowledge, education as a system is a lag because technology and innovation will lead the way forward and scientific theories will come later and education follows scientific theories which are postulated and well articulated. So at any given point in time, T1, T2, T3, if you were to put a time continuum, education will be lagging behind the systems and the innovation and the development that's happening in the world of work to the innovation that's happening in the realm of science and technology and the principles around science, arts, and technology. So this is education. Knowledge is about trying to strike between time continuum T1, T2, and T3. And the skill that is required to shift between T1 to T3 to T3 to T2 in very limited window is the ability that you will come with knowledge of. And that's to me skill, whether it is picking up a skill in programming or picking up a skill in project management and using the skill in project management to run a crisis management group versus running a day-to-day project and delivering on schedule.
So, Shrikant, moving away from the skill question, right? So, there are multiple questions all around the same topic of culture. Let me try and combine these into one question. One is um, from a COVID perspective, everybody is now getting used to work from home, remote working, and so on. It's exciting, it's opening up a lot of new opportunities, but there is a sense that it's going to come at a cost of building organizational culture, number one. Uh, Part of the second part is more and more agile teams, more and more agile way of working, but agile basically requires co-location and osmotic communication. I have to Google what osmotic communication means, but that's a question. And the third one was from Fahim. He says more and more globally diverse and culturally diverse organizations, possibilities of miscommunication and cultural differences are very, very, very high. And therefore, again, it's going to have an impact on the culture. How do we handle all of these, especially as project managers, or even without putting a label to it, as people who are charged with getting things done and executing things? How do they tackle all of this, and what is the relevance of culture in this scenario going forward?
Okay, let me break this into three parts, Kaushik. In one, we are talking about culture. second one, we are talking about the way of working, in the new way of working. If everybody is going to be remote worker, or most of us are going to be remote workers, what is going to be the way in which we will uh, show the consistency of culture and also the relevance of it in the new world, and how will teams therefore function? Osmotic, I suppose, is osmosis with a adverb kind of a situation. Um, so let's start with this. Culture is something that's the fabric that holds the organization together, and that's very clear when you talk about a culture of respect for individual. Even in this current context of where people are working from home and people are working for their clients, delivering to the clients from different places, respect for individual means that there will be a certain discipline and decorum in the way in which we work. For instance, in my team, I would say that all of us will be present for our daily calls, or official team meetings will happen only between 9:30 and 5:30, right? With a majority of people deciding whether it's a 1 hour lunch break, 12:30 to 1:30, or 1 to 2, whichever one you want to take. That's a 30-minute break. Not all of us can go for lunch at the same time because you may have certain other responsibilities and somebody else may have other responsibilities. Second thing is when you talk about the culture of delivery and the discipline of delivery, you cannot wish away that when you say you are working from home, it's another place you're working from, but you will be available at any time, just like in office, right? Or let me know where you're gone so that we can take cognizance of it and deliver. Now, coming to the question of the remote teams, I believe, and this is my personal opinion, is that we are still some way away from a no office work culture. In our head, at least all of us who are in the workforce today, majority of us, for us, the office is a social capital. When I say social capital, it means there is a lot of things that happen there with or without your uh, active involvement, but you being present there gives you a sense of involvement. That said, yeah, I've realized that in this current context of remote working, there's an opportunity for many of us to probably feel excluded. Um, Earlier, if you had, as a project manager, if you just walked into your project bay and spoken to two people in a cubicle, the remaining the remaining two would not have batted an eyelid, and probably they would have shared the joke after you walked away from that place. But today, you do not know what's happening around because there is a one-on-one conversation, and if I do not get involved in a meeting for more than two calls, I start feeling is there something that's happening? Now that's the emotional stress. Earlier you moved away from work home to go to work. Now work is entering your home. When your work enters your home, there's the primary responsibility is of the home environment and our homes. Let's be honest about it. In India, we are not built with the same kind of luxury to work from home the way we would work from office. It's not a professional setting. Uh, Technology gives up quite often, and so you are taking a lot of chances around it. In this context, when you look at it, the culture is not about saying anything is acceptable, right? Just the way at the start of the lockdown, I think a lot of things were taken for it happens, it's okay. But today, I guess after 5, 6 months, most of us are saying this is my work time, right? My maid is not going to come and clean the floor here, nor am I going to walk my dog now. All those things are what we need to take it forward. That's the context of adaptability around here. What will be the future if one had to look at it this way? We will continue to evolve the way in which work is happening. Now, if you really look at it contextually and socially, also, extended periods of work from home adds a lot of pressure for a lot of people. You were going to work because you wanted to get away from certain, or it was a clear demarcation of responsibilities of open office. But don't go just the negative side. The positive is that everybody has an opportunity today. It's the starting ground for an equality workplace which starts at home.
Thank you, Srikanth. And I think that's the topic. Next question, which is connected to that, you touched upon how work is entered into our homes and extended period of working is pretty much causing everybody to be overwhelmed, getting the burnout feeling, feeling saturated. So Google has announced a 3-day weekend in response to something like this. And we do understand and we hope that the company is all about its employees. What do you say about this? I mean, in relation to the work-life balance and continuing to the collective well-being of employees.
It's a talent-led, knowledge-intensive industry. Services industry is about talent and knowledge. Both tend to get fatigued after extended hours. Now, there are ways and means in which different organizations respond to it. Google, perhaps, given the nature of work that they do and the kind of clients that they serve, they can have a 3-day weekend. But if you really read through it closely, it is not for infinite period. It is only for a finite period. They've said that. Um, so elsewhere, you would also have other organizations that would encourage. I think this is part of the leadership uh, journey that most of us went through. Is this part of the lockdown was that we were becoming much more emotionally reciprocative to our teams, and our teams were also becoming equally responsive for that. Is that it's not about, as I said, it is about respecting your space and time, and you also reciprocating it. If it is a 9:30 to 5:30, which is our usual working hours in office, where you would have meetings, you have the flexibility to do your meetings, not at 8 o'clock in the evening or 9:30, when because that's when I'm free. And that discipline is sometimes not going to help anybody. Not sometimes, at all times, does not help anyone. It's fancy to have late night calls, but at a point in time, the family will also realize that you've been waiting for this call to happen and you did not do anything for the rest of the day.
Thank you, Srikanth. I think that pretty much stops us from hoping for a 4-day week going forward, unfortunately.
I think the level of transparencies that our families have now had over the last 4 months. Uh, I think that WhatsApp joke about a grandmother telling uh, a guy saying, "Okay, you go and take care of whatever you want." I can say, "Yes, yes, yes." Can you repeat that in a conference call for 30 minutes? You know, so I think most of us would like to get back to work. Shrikant, there are a lot more questions, but with very limited time. So, what's your final takeaway? What's the message that you want to leave for everybody here? We have about 500 plus people, and as you can see, everybody is passionate about the topic of leadership and HR. So, what would you like to leave all of us with?
I'll leave it with three things, Kaushik. One, leadership is not about driving profit alone. It is driving with purpose and making sure that everybody is with you in your journey. The second thing is leadership is a constant learning process, and it cannot be, there's no one who knows it better. The third thing is leadership is about risk taking and decision making and standing by your team at all costs. And that to me is how I would sum it up as the responsibilities of a leader, and the skills, learning, all these are part and parcel of it.
Thank you so much, Srikanth. I mean, it has been amazing, like you said at the beginning. Fantastic way to spend a Saturday evening, uh, and the way you summarized it also really made it very nice. Thanks for some very candid answers, and thanks for a wonderful session again. And with
Thank
that,
you.
we come to the close of the this session of Common Ground, but a lot of exciting things coming ahead. More on leadership. PMI India has taken the leadership role in launching the India storefront. This is the only second geography outside of US where we can pay in our own currency. This makes life easy for all of us, whether it is our membership renewals or your certification fee. So do check it out. Next time you're renewing your membership or you need to sign up for a certification from PMI, do check out the India storefront. Continuing on the leadership theme, many of you expressed great amount of interest in the artificial intelligence sessions that we had. We had Snehanshu from NASCOM. So continuing on that line, the PMI Pearl City Hyderabad chapter is conducting a masterclass on elements of AI. This will be presented by Gopalan Uppiliyappan, who is the AI leader at Intel India. Again, this is open for everybody, not just the PMI Pearl City chapter, and it's supported by all the region 11 chapters. So do sign up for it. You can email to events@pmi-pcc.org. Komal Mathur is the general secretary, and she'll help you with your questions or your registrations. Of course, you get PDUs for that too. Talking about PDUs, you do get PDUs for this session too. The claim code is on the screen in front of you. Just in case you cannot note it down, all the information from the PMI Common Ground series is available on a separate landing page, www.pmi.org.in/common ground. All the past episodes, the recordings, the PMI, the PDUs, everything is available in one place. Do look it up. You can also see what's the next session coming up, which I'll also tell you right away. The next session, 2 weeks from now, is a completely different kind of a session titled Fuel Your Creativity Through Divergent Thinking. Two guest speakers, Neelakantan Balasubramaniam, the creator of a very Indian creativity tool called the 108% Indian, and Charusmita Rao, who is his co-founder in that 108% Indian and currently leads learning and development for Akamai Technologies. They both will be joining us and helping us open our minds to think divergently. I hope you join us. Like every session that we do in the Common Ground series, this is open to everybody, PMI members and otherwise. And this is one session I would request that you call your colleagues and friends and even family members to come and join. This is a fantastic session that will be useful for everybody. Do also check out the PMI Virtual Experience series, where you do get a chance to listen to some world-class leaders. Details available at the PMI site. And on that note, thank you for joining us once again on a Saturday evening. Stay safe and take care.